Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Dark Sage Walker, and today we are doing the first of the two theme runs based around nihilistic villain characters. Apparently the birds just can't stand to not be part of the spotlight here. Hey guys. You're a very upset bird, you know that? You're probably just, again, hearing the birds outside, but... Sorry about that. So today's winner is, to me, not very surprisingly, Kefka Palazzo, the antagonist of Final Fantasy VI, which to me is absolutely amazing, because now I finally get a chance to talk about one of my favorite villains of all time. Like, you've probably seen me using the Kefka sprite in a few of my thumbnails, and there's a reason for that. He is one of my absolute favorite villains of all time. And it's not because he's, misunderstood, it's not because he's a pretty boy, it's not even for the idea that he's just got such a deep and misunderstood connection to the world. No, he's a goddamn madman. Like, there's nothing more to, it's nothing more, nothing less, he is a goddamn madman. And for that reason, a lot of people probably think him to be kind of a lame villain, because the fact of the matter is, he's pretty simplistic as far as JRPG villains are concerned. Now, I think taking such a simplistic view is doing a little bit of a disservice to the character. Because one thing that everyone forgets about when they're talking about my boy Palazzo is he won. The fact of the matter is, he managed to succeed where many other villains failed, and he got what he wanted. So you kind of stop and think, oh wow, that bastard did it. But let's back up a little bit. Kefka Palazzo is actually, in the beginning, not the main antagonist. The main antagonist, for all intents and purposes, is Emperor Gestalt, who is obviously the head of the new empire taking over things in Final Fantasy VI. What leads them to this revelation is the discovery of what the game deems espers, which are, like summons, eidolons, whatever you want to call them. But what leads to this strength is the idea that magic, which we all know what magic is, but in Final Fantasy VI, it's a waning power. Like, no one's seen magic in generations in the game's time. Birds, will you calm down a little bit? Christ, they are just angry today. These are some angry birds. No relation to the goddamn mobile game. But so magic in the world of Final Fantasy VI has essentially been dead and gone for years and years. And then suddenly they find the remains of an esper, which is of course a creature from a different world that has access to this incredible power. We will take the Magma Rush. I don't know about the Stalwart Defenders. I like the idea, but I also like Gale Force alignment. Ooh, is there any? So I think what I'm going to do is I am going to take the Crimson Clover, but then I also have it on good authority that Puffy Parka and Crimson Clover are a pretty nice synergy. Dark Sage, you already know that! Maybe. Maybe not. I haven't exactly expressly said what I do and don't know. Okay, yeah. I'm not too worried about Jade's chakra locket, so I'm just gonna let that go. I'm also gonna end up having to let go of the idea of the I don't know, stomach. Sorry, I completely lost my train of thought there. What was I talking about? We'll take that. Alright, so not a bad start. I guess I could afford the Stalwart Defenders, but I'm gonna keep going and see if I can't find anything better. Basically what I'm saying is I'm gonna save my money and see if I can't find something a little bit more relevant to my interests. Okay, this room is bugging me. Alright, okay, what I was saying. The Empire in Final Fantasy VI, which, yes, it's starting to sound very Star Wars, as I understand, has essentially rediscovered magic and is using that in conjunction with the technology that they know how to make to produce powerful magitech machinery that they are using to essentially slowly take over and impress their ideas upon the world. And at first, what Kefka is the Emperor's right-hand man. In other words, hi, I'm nobody special. But that changes. Because as you're going through the game, you quickly come to the idea that Kefka himself is not entirely alright in the head. Only reason why I even care about that is because I can sell it later. Singing bowl is probably a good idea. This entire video is just going to be completely overscored by the birds. Like, I can't even get a word in edgewise. They're just constantly loud. Alright, not bad. It's a good way to clear out that room. We'll definitely take this. Everything else is iffy. Just come back to this later. But what I think makes Kefka interesting, and I mean this sincerely, is his nihilistic attitude towards everything. He does not care because his feelings on it are everything is transient. And to... Birds, calm down. Jesus Christ. And to go into a further understanding of what I mean by that, the word transient basically just means short-lived, temporary thing. It's basically not going to last very long. I now realize I could have... Well, I mean, I can still use Nocturne, I just have to go back and buy another Arcana to give to him. Alright, give me something good, buddy. I mean, I kind of like Ball Lightning, but the problem is I'm going to be going up against Thunder Twins, who aren't going to take much damage from it. It is about the best thing here, though. The moment I saw counter rogue, I just said, this isn't going to do anything, is it? And Deferred Dynamo. Yeah, the game wants me to have all the Electric Arcana. So what we have with Mr. Palazzo is that even though he's not necessarily what one would call a big-time schemer, and I know that sounds strange considering that he is the game's main antagonist, but what he is, I mean, for lack of a better word, he's just mad. And because he doesn't care much for essentially life in general, you get crazy things out of him, like poisoning an entire water system in order to eliminate a problem. Like, the entirety of an entire kingdom ends up getting killed because their entire water supply has been replaced with tasty, nutritious poison. Or in the middle of the game, and this is what I mean when I say Kefka 1. The main emperor Gestalt, when they get to the end to the floating continent, and I know this isn't going to make a lot of sense unless you played the game, I understand. But there is a series of I guess change is the right word for it. Oh, hello. I have another opportunity to make good use of that adorable mimic, but let's wait until the end to see if I come across anything else I can sacrifice to it, like this hummingbird feather. And basically what they do is they keep the powers that be essentially in check, and they keep the world in a state of balance. But if you were to move them, and what you're essentially looking at is 3 statues of powerful beings that are just radiating power. And if you were to move them out of their delicate balance, you would end up basically ruining the entire world. So, at this point, Kefka sees his opportunity, and I mean, if you're already thinking, geez, he doesn't destroy the entire world, does he? Yes, he does. He destroys the entire fucking world. And that's the thing. Sephiroth attempts to destroy the world with the black materia. Kefka actually fucking doesn't. Kefka brings about the apocalypse. Sephiroth, in comparison, is just a pretty boy with a sword. And I know that's going to set off some attitude, because I know for a lot of people, Final Fantasy VII is like their most favoritist thing ever. But I'm sorry, Sephiroth has nothing compared to Kefka in the villain game. Pardon me. Ugh, embarrassing. Yeah, I definitely want this token of health for the next floor. Ugh. And that is exactly what I mean when I say he's nihilistic. Because nihilistic doesn't necessarily mean destructive. It just means that you feel that life and many of the creations that have come about are transient and therefore meaningless. And that's very much how he feels. He feels as though life is ultimately meaningless. And it's very much exemplified in a lot of his best quotes and ideas. And the part where he poisons the entire water system of the kingdom, like that part is made all the more chilling because of his assertion that nothing beats the sound of 1,000 voices screaming in unison. And I've said it before, and I say it again, he does not care. He just doesn't. You're looking for Kefka to give a shit, he won't. I want to save that, I want to save that, I want to save that. Everything else can go. There we go. That is a beautiful amount of power. Thank you, Mr. Mimic. Or Miss Mimic, I don't know. I choose to remain relatively agnostic on mimic gender. Alright, so I got off to a late start recording because my roommate was doing the dishes and I felt the dishwasher would be a little bit too much background noise. The birds are just completely making up for that. And that carries through even right up to the end of the game, where he asserts that he's going to create a monument to non-existence. Like, he is... for all... Oh, Elixir of Might. Hey, you guys don't stand a chance. You can't beat me. I won! And I see this here Curse Eater's vest. Go away. And he's such a... like, he is, like I said, he's one of my favorite villains in all of gaming. Part of that isn't just that he's a megalomaniacal, like, death maniac, although it helps. A lot of it is just his humorous dialogue and the way he goes about things. Like, even right up until the end of the game, he's just sitting there cracking jokes, like, everyone is talking about their reasons to keep going, the reasons to keep fighting for their continued existence, and at the end of it all, it looks like he's pondering it. And then he just comes back with, "Pat, you sound like chapters from a self-help book." It's like, yes! This man is amazing! But I would say that even Square Enix understands that this was an amazing character, because they really went out of their way to... Let's see, gaining more signature charge? Oh, I have more money than I thought. Yes, please. Because Kefka is one of the villains that has seen seen the most love, and I don't necessarily mean post-creation, because post-creation everything is Final Fantasy VII because marketability. Like, some people probably don't even know that there is a Final Fantasy game outside of Final Fantasy VII. Like, even with the evidence of, yeah, but the number 7 is clearly in the title, so there must be more than one, we're like, yeah, I don't care. And I think that's just a complete disservice to the entirety of the franchise to just dismiss it out of hand because it's not Final Fantasy VII. But I digress once again. The reason why I say that is because I can't think of any other Final Fantasy villain that has as much attention and thought put into the inspiration of the final battle than that of Mr. Palazzo himself. And in case you're wondering what I mean by that, the entire fight takes place on his, what's called the, it's not the Fanatic's Tower, and I'm not gonna lie, I haven't played I haven't played 6 in a while, so I don't offhand know the name of the final dungeon, but it all culminates on his spire, or I guess his grand monument of non-existence, so to speak. And it takes place in 4 phases. Now, so far this isn't sounding like anything out of the ordinary. I'm going to take the Pathfinder's knapsack just because that's going to help keep me in tip-top shape for the Elixir of Might. And how is this doing? Plus 16, perfect. But here's what sets that apart, because a multi-stage final boss is nothing special. Here's what does make it special. First of all, it takes place in 4 phases as you climb up his tower. Secondly, each phase, aside from the final one, consists of multiple phases, or not multiple entities that you have to deal with. Oh, I missed. There we go. If I hadn't missed, I would have gotten her before she even got her signature off. Now here's where I'm going to want to look for different arcana, because frankly, having all the lightning arcana in the world is a little bit of a detriment against the Wonder Twins. Oh, I did eventually hit something. Funny. I mean, I see Rock Solid Tomahawk, but I don't care. I might want Furious Tempest, but we'll see what relics are for sale. Oh. Wait, what? Family Seal, you are making my dreams come true. I mean, I don't know how useful Hunter's Stiletto will be, but there it is. So, to finish what I was saying now, because I get easily distracted, I'm sure you've all noticed by now. The boss fight comes in 4 phases, and they all represent a different state of being, as outlined in Dante's Divine Comedy. The first stage is up against what looks to be a big demonic gargoyle, and that's significant because that represents essentially hell or inferno, so to speak. And that form is exemplified. Why am I having such a hard time making dashes today? You can go away. Don't know if you noticed this, but nobody likes you, Sentry Eye. Well, I mean, I've got multiple cursed relics, so... Or I maybe only have one cursed... No, I have two. So, that's doing me some good. That's doing me some good. A huge cooldown reduction. I love it. But that form is mostly focused on... just pure attack strength. I want to say it knows spells that shake the earth, like Quake and Magnitude 8. Which, yeah, those both sound like Quakes, but trust me, they're two separate spells. Oh, that wasn't an enemy. Oh, that was just my destructive urge playing up again. Thunder drop. Yep, there they go. Yeah, they're just going nuts over here. Surely you can't help but hear the birds just having a field day. I'm trying to record. Okay, we'll be as loud as possible so people notice us. No, not exactly what I wanted. That's the whole reason why I wasn't recording this morning, is because I was trying to reduce background noise. Oh well. You know what they say about the best laid plans of mice and men. And if you don't, you're uncultured swine! Okay, not actually. You probably just haven't read that book. Okay, can we stop with the bullshit now? Give me that. Okay, so because Hunter's Stiletto and Gummy Vitamins aren't doing anything for my run, or rather they're doing very little, I will take Gilded Helm, because that's going to produce one of two results. One, I'll end up having a lot of money at the end because I didn't want to buy anything, and I'll just have a bunch of extra money to pump into my armor. Or two, it'll have very little effect, but I'll still have some gold, so it'll give me some armor, because I purchased extra things from the shops to make up for deficiencies elsewhere. Not that I'm having a bad run, mind. Is there anything here? Increases damage based on how much gold you currently have. The problem is, Kefka's a nihilist. He probably doesn't care about holding on to stuff. Doesn't really care about money. Certainly doesn't care about the value of any human life. Or any life, for that matter. Honestly, with this rope, I'm not too worried about upgrading it. So, I keep getting distracted. Mostly because of you chirping fiends. So, the first stage of the fight is against a demon that's supposed to represent the idea of essentially Inferno. The second stage of the fight is against a lot of it's essentially a scrambled mess. It's just an eldritch abomination of parts. And I don't just necessarily mean machinery, because some of them look like they could be distinctly human parts, which, one, ups the creepy factor, but two, that stage of the fight is almost entirely focused on mechanical-based attacks, like lasers and diffusers. So that part of the fight is supposed to represent essentially the middle ground, or Purgatorio. Or Purgatory, for those of you who aren't reading Dante's Inferno. It could also symbolize the realm of man. So take that however you will, but the symbolism is clearly there. And then the third form only has two enemies, but they're very holy-looking, distinct figures meant either to look like the Virgin Mary and like the Archangel Michael, or to represent the thought of like Adam and Eve. Either way, it's a very holy-looking both battleground, and the soundtrack really amps it up there. So it's supposed to feel like, you know, like this is the part of the fight that's representing heaven. And then the fourth stage is clearly against Kefka himself, who at this point has been morphed and twisted to look like a freaking angel. Like, it's so crazy how much time and effort they put into that. And I thought the best way to represent the theme, which is, and by the way, yes, this is why I waited so long to talk about the build, is because I modeled it after that final battle. So, Flame Strike. This seems like the sort of thing that that a demon from the underworld would use as their basic. They just point, burst of flames. That's a very demonic feeling attack, and therefore that's what I use to represent the first phase of the fight. Magma Rush is what I use to go along with the second phase of the fight, because both of them in pure mechanical fury, and in the idea that it creates parts. Nothing quite exemplifies that, at least in this game, as much so as a landmine, so Magma Rush. The third part, Striking from Heaven. That's very clearly what Thundering Chain makes me think, and that's why I chose that as my starting standard, because that feels very much like a strike from heaven and very much represents the third phase of that final battle. The fourth phase against Kefka himself, basically from atop of his, what I would say is his monument to non-existence, and again, it's not the Fanatic's Tower, that's a different dungeon. But from up there, he likes to pass judgment on people, using what he deems his light of judgment. You smarmy cheating shit. Oh my goodness. Okay, this being the only boss that does a lot of teleporting, it's really hard, and sometimes it's really hard to land a hit on them. But the best thing I could think of to represent the Light of Judgment was, of course, Distortion Beam. Because it was either that or Aqua Beam, and Aqua Beam didn't feel right. Because he's not firing pressurized water, he's firing just a straight up manifested magic. And yeah, that's kind of what Distortion Beam is. Not to mention, it also plays very nicely on that idea of nihilism, because it is chaos magic, it's basically nothingness. Another token of health? How do you expect me to use that? Well, considering what I just said about the whole Light of Judgment thing, it would be kind of silly to not take Wanderer's Mechanism. And, yeah, we'll also take Surefire Rocket. And I want to point out, the comparisons that I'm making to Final Fantasy VII aren't meant to be complete disparagements. It's meant to provoke thought, because I know a lot of people really love Final Fantasy VII, and I completely understand why. I would hardly say it's a bad game, but I do think maybe it gets a little bit more attention than it deserves. Because not only was Kefka a more deserving villain, but the game also had a much larger cast of characters that were actually decently fleshed out. And also, that final boss fight in and of itself is just amazing. Like, I actually very much believe that the final boss theme for Kefka Palazzo, Dancing Mad, I really believe that is one of Nobuo Uematsu's best works. And if you haven't heard Dancing Mad or any of its different versions before, I invite you to go look it up and listen. Like, people constantly say how much they love Sephiroth's boss theme. You want to talk about a good boss theme? Keep in mind, I said that the final boss fight against Mr. Palazzo has 4 phases. Each of those 4 phases has its own musical accompaniment, has its own movement in the entire boss fight. Like, you want to talk about good music? Holy shit! Like, Dancing Mad was one of those things that made me realize you can do crazy ass things in a video game, and if done well, chef's kiss. You know, birds, you're not really adding much to the conversation, I'm just gonna say. So, if you haven't heard Dancing Mad, I implore you, go out, look it up. It is, in my opinion, perhaps the best boss theme ever. Matter of fact, don't even bother going to look it up. I'll just put a link to it in the description of the video, along with the links to my social media. So again, thank you guys very much for watching. I know I was a little bit scatterbrained because of those two, but I very much appreciate you coming in, spending some free time with me. Kefka is one of the best villains in video games, period. Changed my mind. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Dark Sage Walker, and I will be seeing you